I want you to actually take as much time as you need and expand on the China thing, Lee, because you're always so good about this stuff and looking into it and finding these things that people don't hear elsewhere. The floor is yours. Please go.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at what was happening during those years, it was culminating with George W. Bush at the time. It happened under Bill Clinton. It had under George W. Bush's father, President George H.W. Bush. There was even some of it during Reagan, but of course it starts with Nixon and Kissinger, really putting us on the road to this poisonous relationship with China. And what that looked like, I've spoken to different servicemen from around the country, and I think it's really interesting to hear their perspective coming back from Afghanistan, coming back from Iraq, and going back to their hometowns, and seeing the amount of damage that had been done by the United States, right, through the WTO, offshoring its jobs to China. People were coming back and looking at their communities. Servicemen were coming back and looking at their communities and like, what happened here? What did I miss? You know, a lot of servicemen and women, 3, 4, 5, a whole bunch of tours. They were away for a very long period, and they came back and they're looking around at what happened. And there's a wonderful writer I have to recommend, Jesse. I don't know if you know him, a gentleman named Samuel Finley. And Sam wrote a novel, but also he writes really interesting essays for places like I Am 1776. And I know you were a Marine, and he was a soldier, so you might hate him for that. But he's a wonderful writer, and you have to check him out. And he wrote a great piece a couple of years ago just saying, yeah, you know, we came back and we're looking around and we see all these things that have gone crazy. He was in Afghanistan, and he's looking at, so all these things sound terrible, and we're wondering what happened to our community, what happened to our country. And then when Donald Trump comes along and says, yeah, I see the same thing, I'm going to do something about it. And that's when the attack started. He has a great way of putting it. It's something like, how dare you notice what we did to destroy you? How dare you object? How dare you complain? And that's what the war on Donald Trump is about, right? It's because it's not exclusively about Donald Trump. It's about the people who said, thank you, Donald Trump, for recognizing what happened. Now, you say you're going to do something about it, so thank you. Do something about it. I'm wandering all over the place, Jesse, but just stick with me for 1 second. Donald Trump, by focusing on China, he was right to focus on China, to say this is a really big issue. We've sold out our country to China. The amount of money that went over there and reflected in our trade deficit, reflected in the amount of jobs lost, the amount of pain suffered by Americans. It's just absolutely astonishing. And then you realize a large part of the financial crisis, a large part of that bailout was about helping out the Chinese who held a whole bunch of US debt as well as mortgage-backed securities. The thing is, our people are the ones who got us in jeopardy with these different financial instruments. It's just amazing when you think about it. And it's George W. Bush, it's under his term that all this stuff is starting to come together. So, you know what that makes me think is their hatred, the establishment's hatred of Trump is rational in one way. Because Trump called them hypocrites and creeps, and he knows they're liars. They wanted to be able to do these terrible things, these miserable things to the American public and get rich, and they wanted to be able to get away from it. And Donald Trump noticed. And Donald Trump said, I don't care about the excuses that you have, George W. Bush, talking about promoting democracy around the world, throughout the Middle East, spending American blood like it's cheap money to promote democracy across the Middle East. I know this wasn't about democracy. It was about something else. You people are stupid and you're cruel. And that's why they hate Trump. They hate Trump because Trump called them out. Trump called them out not just for their failures, but for their arrogance, their vanity, what they consider their virtue and their honor. Trump said, you have no honor. You're liars. You're liars. That's what you are. And that's why George W. Bush hates Donald Trump. That's why they all hate Donald Trump, and that's why they hate Americans.
Don't miss Jesse Kelly Breaks History, The Forgotten Genocide, the first episode of a new series available now exclusively for First TV supporters. Visit the First TV app or thefirsttv.com to subscribe and start watching today.